the hour.
This CBS News special report is part of our continuing coverage of America at War.
3 o'clock in the East USA, 11 p.m. in Baghdad. A hard-hit Baghdad again with selected targets. Headlines of this hour include Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld has declared the air war fully underway. He predicts Saddam Hussein's regime is, quote, history. The U.S. much talked about, quote, shock and awe attack has been underway for about 2 hours now, and in many ways it has been awesome to behold. Warheads have slammed into Baghdad, hitting parts of the presidential complex, among other targets. U.S. officials have been saying the scale of the air attacks today reflects the progress or lack of progress of backdoor surrender negotiations. These were some of the scenes as Baghdad was hit today, by far the most extensive bombardment of Baghdad to date. On the ground, U.S. forces in southern Iraq have reached the Euphrates River, and they have seized a bridge. They are now more than 100 miles into Iraq, well over 100 miles into Iraq. From the Kuwaiti border, it's about 300, maybe 350 miles to Baghdad, so they're at least 1/3 of the way to Baghdad. Earlier, U.S. Marines raised the flag over the southern tiny port city of Qasr, and they've taken full control of that southern port. 2 U.S. Marines are now confirmed to have died having been shot in combat. And American officials believe, now they say, that it was Saddam Hussein speaking on that televised program that we've seen him on now 3 times, including today, though government officials in Washington point out it's possibly a pre-recorded speech and possibly some of these appearances were recorded before the attacks begun. The government officials also say that they are convinced Saddam and his sons were in the bunker targeted that night. Their condition now still unknown, and today's scenes on Iraqi television showed Saddam Hussein in a meeting with some of his military advisors and one of his sons. It's a little uncertain whether it's the older son or the younger son. The latest information indicates, contrary to what we reported earlier, that it may indeed be his younger son. But at any rate, he's seen with one of his 2 sons in what was shown on Iraqi television today. Again, asterisk bottom of the page, no one can say whether that was something canned ahead of time or pre-recorded. Now, we have on the phone with us, take a look, Buck Hernan. You believe that's the younger son talking to his father?
I do. That's the younger son there. I don't see the older son at all.
All right, this is the videotape shown today on Iraqi television. I repeat for emphasis that the U.S. government has checked 8 ways from Sunday and Monday and say they're convinced that the picture is that of the real Saddam Hussein, although they don't know when the picture was taken. We have on the telephone with us Cynthia Bowers, who's aboard the carrier and with the carrier group surrounding the USS Abraham Lincoln.
Are you still available?
And Cynthia,
Yeah.
I want to pick up with your report. Forgive us for the interruption, but you were saying that a lot of warplanes have come off the deck of the Lincoln today.
Right. They left around just after dark, actually. So many planes, dozens of planes. They were lined up much like the runway at O'Hare, just one after the other being catapulted into the sky. The deck was just vibrating with the intensity of the engine roar and with the excitement of what was about to happen. And then there was the kind of the odd waiting period where a lot of us sat and looked at pictures of Baghdad on television and the different TVs around the ship, waiting on the effects of the strike to start showing up on television. It was a matter of, we knew what was coming, and it was just a matter of wait and see. But the reaction here was shock and awe on our parts. I mean, we knew what these planes were loaded with, 1,000 and 2,000-pound bombs. It's been very clearly delineated to us that these had strategic targets that have been well established ahead of time, no intention for any collateral damage or civilian injuries in human terms. But the jets all took off, and we were not allowed to talk about this at all until the jets made their way back. So we've been in kind of a state of waiting, watching, and now when they heard that the jets were coming back, a huge roar erupted from the hangar bay of this carrier with delight that their boys and girls were making it back home safely.
Cynthia Bowers aboard the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. Let's pause for a second to point out that an aircraft carrier is literally a small city with anywhere from 7,000 or 8,000 up to maybe 12,000 or 13,000 well-trained American sailors and Marines on board. And let's just think for a second what it takes to keep that big warship where it's supposed to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. On the telephone now, CBS News correspondent John Roberts with elements of the 1st Marine Division somewhere in southern Iraq. John, resistance met so far?
Dan, there's been absolutely no resistance. That's been the curious thing about the lane that we've been coming through the southern Iraqi desert in. We have seen absolutely nothing. The only actual human beings that we saw were a small group of Bedouins who had either a white flag on their tent or were holding a white flag as they were tending their flocks in the desert. There was a couple of people, a man and his wife that we went by, who actually waved their hands to say hello as the American military rolled by. Now, that might be a survival tactic as much as it is a welcoming tactic. I didn't know. We didn't stop to talk to them. But they're still expecting at some point the Marines that I talked to encounter an enemy. Some sounded today relieved that they didn't encounter any hostile fire. Some sounded disappointed that they came here to engage in combat, and they spent most of the day on a drive through the desert. Earlier today, we were on the roll through the southern Iraqi desert.
John Roberts reporting with the Marines. Here's
in the southern Iraqi
part of what was
desert,
recorded earlier.
I'd like to just kind of show you the type of conditions that the troops are dealing with.
Carol Gillisberg?
Take a look at the front of our vehicle. Here's a camera at the front of our vehicle. The choking dust of this desert, the sand is a consistency almost like talcum powder. And you can see that it just completely obliterates your line of sight, and it makes driving very, very difficult. Kirk Spitzer, who is our able driver there, who you can see right in front of me, did a tremendous job getting us up to the border last night, and doing another great job today driving in this choking dust. At one point last night, we thought that we had fallen off of the main column, but Kirk managed to get us right back on. If you want to take a look at what's happening at the back now, again, the dust is sort of choking this. We'll clean this off as the day goes on, but there's the rest of the column that's coming behind us. Now, looking off to our side here, let me pick up our remote camera here, if I could. We seem to see a line of vehicles off to the left there. It's a line of camels. Through the smoke in my aging eyes, it's difficult to tell what's what. But there is the ship of the desert out there to the side. Some of what we're seeing as we travel through the desert here. The one thing that we haven't encountered, and it's been kind of unusual, is there have been no opposing forces that have been sighted so far. Now, obviously, we have some lead elements of this battalion that are roaming far in front of us, who are making sure that all of the lanes are cleared. But so far, there's been absolutely no sight of any Iraqi forces. I have to say that there was heavy bombardment last night. They were just pounding these units. The 18th Division, the 51st Division, with artillery. Shells were falling at the rate of 1 a second at a 30-minute barrage. Then they take a 30-minute break to rearm, and then they'd be back at it again, a shell a second for another 30 minutes. We saw them from our pre-positioning point just south of the berm that marks the northernmost point of the Kuwaiti border. We saw them dropping bombs all night long. There's a hill to the north, just to the north of the Iraq-Kuwaiti border, and I think I'm good in saying this because this was supposed to be attacked last night. It's called Safwan Hill. It's an observation post. It's a listening post. And the U.S. military, changing again here to got our camera up and a helicopter up in the sky there, as you can see. But the U.S. military wanted to take away the Iraqi military's eyes. And so what they did was they dropped at least 20 JDAM bombs, these joint direct attack munitions with the GPS guide, and a bunch of napalm on the top of that hill. They said that the elevation of the hill was 441 feet when they started. It would be 421 feet when they finished. They plan to take 20 feet off of the top of that mountain. And the reason why they dropped the napalm was they said that they wanted to send up a signal flare so that the 51st and the 18th Iraqi divisions could see that from a long way off, know what they were up against, and the U.S. military's intention with that was to encourage them to lay down their weapons. They're trying as much as possible here to minimize Iraqi casualties, to minimize the possibility of American casualties by trying to convince these divisions to surrender.
Now, from time to time during the day, we heard word passed back through the column that there were Iraqi prisoners who were coming up to the column to surrender. But again, it just turned out to be Bedouin families, farmers who wanted to just show the white flag. Obviously, they got the message from the leaflets that the United States military has been dropping over southern Iraq for the last month or so, saying if you encounter U.S. forces, here's how to comport yourself, hold a white flag above your head, show the forces that you're not hostile, and they will either pass you by or they'll stop and talk to you. The column that we're with moves so quickly through the desert that they really don't have time to process prisoners of war. So if someone comes out with a white flag, they'll identify them. Sometimes the scouts that are on the back of the light armored vehicles will dismount just to check to make sure that it's not a ruse or as part of an ambush. They'll check to make sure that the situation is safe. Then they'll pass word back to the main division to say we've got some people who want to talk to us about either surrendering if it's a prisoner of war, or want to talk to us about safe passage if it's a Bedouin or a farmer, and would you please talk to them when you come through. We have been stationary for about the last 3 hours or so. We're expected to move out very soon. There's a particular strategic location that I can't mention that they're hoping to achieve, a strategic objective that they're hoping to achieve later on tonight. So we are expecting to be moving out very soon. Just back to the irony, Dan, if I could, of rolling through the same area as one of the major battles of the first Gulf War was fought in. We saw plenty of carcasses of tanks and other armor, but that's all from 12 years ago. Literally none of it from yesterday, Dan.
Roberts, John, I know you can't talk about specifically where you are, but we're having some difficulty, and I think viewers are, of knowing in what direction you're headed. Is this Marine unit headed for Baghdad? Is it headed for that target in some other direction that you can't specify? Give us some sense of to where you are moving.
Well, Dan, the commander of the unit that we're with is Lieutenant Colonel Eddie Ray. And in 1991, he won the Navy Cross for defending a rear division headquarters from an Iraqi battalion that came out of the oil fields in the southern part of Kuwait. He's a man who likes to be in the action. You don't win the Navy Cross if you don't like to be in the action, and it's his plan, I think, and I don't know if it will work out that way in terms of where the orders come down, but I think in his head, it's his plan to be one of the first people to get outside the gates of Baghdad. I think that's something that he really personally would like to see happen.
I'll bet he would. John Roberts reporting live on phone from somewhere in southern Iraq with a Marine unit that it would like very much to be the first or among the first to reach the gates of Baghdad, which may be another day or two away. The U.S. 3rd Infantry Division is well ahead of that Marine unit at the moment, operating at last report somewhere west of the Euphrates River, still in the bottom third of the country, but at least a third of the way plus between the Kuwaiti border and Baghdad. Now, with the 3rd Infantry Division of the U.S. Army is CBS News correspondent Jim Axelrod. He reports that the tank units and other units of that infantry division are moving, what he said, very fast. He filed this report on the move.
According to the commander of the 3rd Infantry Division's 1st Brigade Combat Team, today's start of the ground war, in his words, couldn't have gone much better. He's talking about a day that saw troop movement from the Iraq-Kuwait border up to the edge of the Euphrates River Valley in 6 hours, a rate of speed he was very pleased with. Along the way, the 1st Brigade Combat Team captured the Jalabah Airfield, a former Iraqi military airfield that's been out of commission for 12 years since the end of the First Gulf War. This gives the U.S. Army an important place to base Black Hawk helicopters, Apache attack helicopters, medevac helicopters for any missions north from here. So the end of the first day leaves commanders of the 3rd Infantry Division, one of 2 main ground troop elements, pleased with the rate of progress, although they're not expecting the next several days necessarily to go the way today went. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, with the 3rd Infantry Division in Iraq.
Now, we have new information about today's strikes on Baghdad. We're going to try to get up the videotape of the worst of the strikes, which came just after noon Eastern time today. And as we play this videotape, absorb this information. Today's attack, the first attack on Baghdad today, came from 320 Tomahawk cruise missiles fired by ships in the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. This is according to Rear Admiral Matthew G. Moffett, who is commander of the aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk Battle Group. These missiles, 320 Tomahawk cruise missiles. I put an exclamation point behind that because the first night when Baghdad was hit, I believe it was hit by 36 Tomahawk missiles. Now keep in mind, it doesn't mean that all of these missiles fell on anywhere near the city center of Baghdad. Some of them did, because we know that the sections of the old palace were hit along the Tigris River. But the 320 Tomahawk cruise missiles includes targets on the outskirts of Baghdad, as well as Baghdad proper, if you will. More missile alert sirens have been heard in Kuwait City, and Mark Phillips is there. Mark?
Dan, we're under another alert here. As you can probably hear, the sirens are wailing again in Kuwait City. This is the third time today that this has happened. There's no sign of any impact or any attack directly on the city, and thus far we've been lucky that there hasn't been anything right in the town itself. Earlier today, in some of the earlier raids here, there was one missile that was intercepted by Kuwaiti Patriot missiles and destroyed in the northern desert of Kuwait. But Kuwait City, for the third time today and now the 10th time in 2 days, is under an air raid alert. Dan?
Mark Phillips in Kuwait City. Mark, as I understand it, you haven't heard a thud of any missile. It's just, well, I won't say just, it's another alert, and the reason everybody goes to the gas mask is because there's always a danger one of these missiles gets through and turns loose some chemical or biological agent. But I'm just double checking. You haven't heard any thumps that would indicate to you of any kind of missile hit?
There hasn't been any impact sound, any thump, any explosion here. In fact, over the past 2 or 3 days of these attacks, we've only heard, well, in 2 days, we've only heard one explosion on the far outskirts of town. And we put on these masks and other gear when we have to, because of the threat that those warheads that the missiles are carrying might in fact be chemical or biological. Thus
Understood.
far, all of the ordnance that's come in has been conventional.
Understood, Mark. Mark Phillips reporting live from Kuwait City, where there's been another alert, and that alert might be taken a little more seriously after what happened earlier in Kuwait City, that another Iraqi missile of some description, nobody knows quite what these missiles are specifically coming from the Iraqis, but another missile of some kind is reported to have been knocked out by the U.S. Patriot missile defense system. Whether it was hit by a more standard generation of Patriot missiles, or the new and supposedly vastly improved Patriot PAC-3 missile is unknown. I want to emphasize that the Saddam Hussein is believed to have had some missiles that he said he didn't have, missiles capable of carrying biological and chemical agents. The most recent speculation has been that maybe some or all of these missiles he's throwing at Kuwait have been bought from the Chinese or some intermediary, Chinese silkworm missiles, but you have to put all that under the heading of speculation. Now, what's believed to be all clear sirens have sounded in Baghdad after 3 series of airstrikes today. We'll show you the live picture of Baghdad and let you listen for a second. I think the all clear sirens have sounded. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be and can't be more attacks on Baghdad as the night goes along. It's just past 11 o'clock, not even midnight yet in Baghdad. There's a lot of nighttime to come in that city, but what are generally considered to be all clear sounds, at least for the moment, sounded in Baghdad a short while ago. Arizona Senator John McCain, United States Senator, joins us from Capitol Hill. Senator McCain, thanks for being with us again. What can you tell us about what you've learned about the progress of the war?
Well, we've learned, Dan, that it's going exceedingly well. In some respects, exceeded our best expectations, emphasizing, of course, that we have a long, long way to go. But the fact that we've been able to secure the southern oil supplies, both preventing dumping oil into the ocean and also minimizing the fires as we gain control of the oil fields in southern Iraq and the largely unimpeded progress of our movement toward Basra and north, I think have all been very optimistic scenarios. Again, we've got a long way to go. We don't know what the Republican Guard is going to do. We don't know the impact of this latest shock and awe, if that's what we are now calling it. But overall, I think it's exceeded our expectations. We're keeping our fingers crossed, and we grieve for the loss of the young Americans and British soldiers who have already sacrificed.
Senator, an admiral says that 320 Tomahawk cruise missiles were fired by ships in the Gulf, Persian Gulf, and the Red Sea in the attack today on Baghdad. That's a lot of missiles.
Well, it's been remarked on several times by you and others, and all of us who are observers and all of us who remember the Gulf War, the incredible difference in the accuracy of the firepower between the Gulf War just 12 years ago and that of today. We saw the first manifestation of that accuracy in Afghanistan. Now we're seeing it on display again. It's really remarkable, the preponderance of pinpoint accuracy that we now have, and the tremendous increase in effect it can have on a battlefield scenario. Somewhere Billy Mitchell is smiling.
Barry Mitchell being the legendary proponent of air superiority. Senator,
who was court-martialed for his views, as you remember, as you recall, Dan, from reading the history of this great visionary.
I'm sorry to report, Senator, I am old enough to remember that, as a matter of fact. Senator, we're going to move on to some other elements. I do appreciate you being with us. You know, you get briefed. Is Saddam Hussein alive? If he's alive, is he wounded? What's your best available information?
You know, we don't know. You hear different things, everything from him being alive to being carried out on a stretcher to being killed. So there's just no definite information on that. But what has happened, Dan, and as we all know, is that there has been a disconnect in command and control from Baghdad. Whether that was caused by his incapacitation or the incapacitation of others, or just happened, is hard to know. But the breakdown in command and control from Baghdad has been beneficial in places all over, particularly in southern Iraq, where we are concentrating a lot of our effort.
Senator John McCain of Arizona, hero of the Vietnam War, thanks again for being with us. We're going to go to Jim Axelrod again. This time he is at the edge of the Euphrates River Valley. We can go to the map as we go to Jim. It's unclear to me whether this is live or on tape, but we're picking up this Jim Axelrod report. I believe that he's live. Yes, live from the edge of the Euphrates River, which is referred to any number of times from biblical times forward. Jim?
Dan, yes, we are live, and the reason we have to be sort of circumspect in terms of our location is at the request of the military, not wanting to give specific miles that we've traveled today from the border. But it has been a rapid trip from the border. It started at dawn this morning. The 3rd Infantry Division, one of the 2 main elements supplying ground troops in this push towards Baghdad, sent through some of their 10,000 vehicles that they travel with in a massive push at the border, quite impressive to watch. And then they continued all the way up this push north, stopping at one point at the Jalabah airfield, a former Iraqi airfield that's been sort of out of commission the last dozen years or so since Desert Storm. This was secured today by the U.S. Army, a task force from the 3rd Infantry Division, and this gives the Army a place to base not only Apache attack helicopters, but also Black Hawks and some medevacs, and allows the Army more mobility in operations north, because they now have a place. Those Apache helicopters, as you know, are such sophisticated tank killers and attack machines. It gives them a place to base. So when I went to a briefing just about 2 hours ago with the commander of one of the brigade task forces, he said that the first day of the ground war had gone, in his words, as well as could be expected. Who knows what the next couple of days hold, but that's not the kind of phrase that a military man is going to throw around lightly. At the end of the first day of the ground war, That's what we're hearing here in Iraq. Dan?
Things are quiet in Baghdad. The emphasis for the moment, the storyline of the hour, is on the ground movement, the rapid advance of the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division. And Jim Axelrod, let me ask you, what about these reports that there have been some tank battles involving 3rd Infantry tanks? True or untrue, and any other sign of resistance?
Well, the 3rd Infantry is divided into 3 distinct combat brigades. We are with the 1st Combat Brigade, and we do understand one of the other brigades was involved in some volley of fire back and forth. Tank fire, we are unclear and unsure and cannot confirm that, but we do know that of the 3 brigades, only one was involved in any kind of action today. Very quiet day with the 1st Brigade, not only in terms of not seeing any Iraqi opposition, but also in terms of prisoners of war, less than 10, the commander tells us. So whether or not one of the other brigades was involved in a tank battle and just how significant is still unclear, because they are spread out over a rather large area, and we're just not with them, Dan.
We're looking at a picture in southern Iraq taken earlier. That was a piece of potential bridge crossing equipment I think we saw. And that may be a Patriot missile. It looks like it is. Keep in mind that the Patriot missiles will go along with particularly a huge U.S. force such as these tank columns and Bradley fighting vehicles as part of the 3rd Infantry. So they're taking the Patriots with them. The Patriots will be set up to help defend this force as it goes along. Now these pictures, as we look at them and as we listen to Jim Axelrod live from the scene, these are the kinds of scenes that you would have seen during World War II in the great desert campaigns of North Africa. Of course, the equipment now is much more modern. Jim, if you're still with us there, we know that when an army moves, is able to move swiftly and keeps itself rolling, that morale tends to stand up pretty high. What's the situation with morale there? We know there have been some problems with sand. Sand is hard on equipment, but what do the troops say when you talk to them?
Well, Dan, it's a particular point of pride, particularly with the 3rd Infantry, that they're self-contained. In other words, a huge unit, somewhere near 20,000 soldiers and some 10,000 vehicles, but that allows them to be entirely self-contained, and as I say, a particular point of pride that nothing is going to stop them. So as they came through today, the border, and as you say, this sort of massive undertaking, Hollywood-type pictures, there were thumbs up and smiles and waves as if this is what all the training was for. I should make a point, Dan, that this whole embedding process, one thing we've heard over and over from officers is they have a story to tell, and the reason they've wanted reporters close by is to get their story out, the military story out. They couldn't have asked for any better picture to illustrate the story that they want to tell than this huge movement of troops, soldiers, vehicles that we saw at dawn this morning. As I say, an impressive sight, and exactly the reason that the military wanted the cameras there.
Speaking to Jim Axelrod, who's with the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division right along just west of the Euphrates River. While traveling north, Jim, and I keep keeping in mind how quickly the unit has traveled, any flashes of light on the horizon that would indicate airstrikes or artillery fire? Or we may have lost, no, Jim, go ahead.
Rocket fire. Yeah, earlier tonight, Dan, we saw some rocket fire, multiple launch rocket, and it was different than last night, the real big ones that we saw and reported on. This was sort of more standard, and it was just several small volleys, I'd say 2 or 3, and this was about, I'd say 3 hours ago. But other than that, Dan, we really, I must stress, the reason today progressed, in the words of the commander we talked to, as well as could be expected, was because they encountered no resistance, or very little resistance.
Jim, if you will, I hate to interrupt you, but we need to take a slight break. If you can hold on there, Jim Axelrod reporting live with the 3rd Infantry Division. We're going to go to the half-hour mark and say to our stations along the way, this is CBS News continuing coverage of America at War. Stay in here with us.
This CBS News special report is part of our continuing coverage of America at War. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
And here's some of what you need to know about the war at this hour. The usually reticent Secretary of Defense of the United States says the Iraqi regime is, quote, losing control of their country, unquote. The heaviest bombardment of Baghdad so far is underway today. There's a lull in Baghdad at the moment, but these are the kinds of scenes that were seen earlier in the day. By far the largest attack on Baghdad yet. There have been 3 waves of bombing attacks, explosions going off on specific targets in the city. But worth underlining that as best can be made out, that the infrastructure in the city was not hit, nor were civilian areas of the city hit. The Council of Ministers building, one of many targeted, is still aflame in the Iraqi capital. There's also been heavy bombing in the northern city of Kirkuk and perhaps in Mosul. Meanwhile, CBS News correspondent Jim Axelrod on the scene reports that in southern Iraq, U.S. forces have made it about a third of the way plus to Baghdad, but at last report the 3rd Infantry Division was still operating west of the Euphrates River. Whether they will cross that ancient and storied river or not remains to be seen. They're making their way up the Euphrates River. And Jim, I want to come back to you if you're still there, Jim Axelrod. Give us, I know you don't want to give a specific location, and we don't want you to for security reasons, but true that you're still operating west of the Euphrates. Has any part of the 3rd Infantry crossed that river?
No, Dan, the briefings we've received is that everyone is still west of the Euphrates. As we were saying right before break, the speed, the rapid rate of movement today astonished even some officers. They went from the border, the Kuwait-Iraq border, to this current location where we are in less than 6 hours, stopping really only to stretch their legs and, as I say, secure this one airfield. But it was really an unimpeded and very rapid move. Southern Iraq, of course, was an area in which a lot of troops were thought to have been pulled back further north, more toward Baghdad, and that was certainly reflected in everything we saw today. The biggest problem that the military faced was just the sand in the desert and the wind, and making sure that you could get a lungs full of good air. That was really the biggest problem for most of the troops today.
Jim Axelrod reporting live with the 3rd Infantry Division of the U.S. Army still operating west of the Euphrates River. We take you now live to CBS News correspondent Byron Pitts, who is at a U.S. Marine helicopter base that's undergoing once again an alert. Byron, tell us about it.
Well, Dan, we just finished up our 9th alert of the last 24 hours. We all had to don our gas masks. We're already in our chemical suits, but we were just given the all clear a few moments ago, so now the Marines are going back to their jobs. The maintenance workers are going back to the Hueys and hangars. The pilots are going back out to the front line, the flight line, to finish their work. Joining us now, though, is the XO of HMLA 169. For security reasons, we're not allowed to give his name or his rank, but he's the XO, the executive officer for the Light Attack Helicopter Squadron 169, the Vipers. Sir, I know that you've been conducting operations. I know we're not allowed to talk about operations currently underway, but what can you tell us about the missions your Marines have been on thus far?
Well, the primary missions our Marines have been involved in started yesterday afternoon, went through late last night, and continue through today and through the evening. Our primary operations have been support of 1st Marine Division in the southeastern portion of Iraq, as well as the 1st UK Division in the southeastern region as well.
Those are the commandos, the British commandos who moved into the southern portion.
That's correct. The 40 and 42 commando units that move into as part of the 1st UK Division.
I know that there are a lot of family members back in Camp Pendleton who've been watching CBS to keep track of the 169. Any words of encouragement to them that your Marines are well, morale is good?
Well, everything is going well so far. We've had some challenging times. The Marines have been very deliberate and focused on the mission at hand now. I would like to say, though, for the families back home, we appreciate all their support. That's a critical part of not only supporting our Marines here, but also supporting the families back home. Also, sir, I'd like to say our thoughts and prayers go out to those U.S. Marines and the United Kingdom Royal Marines that were killed in the mishap last night. Tragic event for all the forces here.
I know that a number of those Marines were friends of members of your squadron. How does it impact morale here? Your men and women are working around the clock, a part of this powerful force, but yet accidents happen, lives are lost. How does it impact the morale of your Marines?
Well, it's a tough event. It is the word on that type of event gets out very quickly. The Marines understand that type of things. While it's not acceptable, we understand it is a part of the operations that we do. So again, it is a tragic event for all of us, but we have to continue to go on, and doing anything less would be unfortunate and not honor those Marines that did have a sacrifice there.
Talk about the impact of these alerts we've had. 9 in the past 24 hours. Your Marines have to put on we're already in the mop suits. They have to guard against those masks, the gloves. How does it impact the work they have to do day to day?
Well, it's not a scheduled event, and it is come at any time. I would probably tell you that probably the biggest impact that we've had is the interruption to the work that we're doing, as well as the sleep and the rest of the Marines getting. For example, last night we had flight ops all evening, and we had continue ops today, and Marines were getting 1 and 2 hours of sleep last night, if that. And as they continue on, this does play into part of the fatigue and wears on the Marines.
Yes, sir. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The XO, the 169 from Camp Pendleton, California. Dan, back to you.
Byron Pitts reporting live from that Marine chopper base. And to put that in context, another missile, we don't know what kind of missile, was thrown at Kuwait today. It reportedly was knocked out of the sky by the U.S. protective Patriot missile. Keep in mind that the new Patriot missile intercepts any incoming missile at a very high altitude, and it's in effect a bullet hitting a bullet, not like the old Patriot, which when it got in sort of the neighborhood would explode in hopes of knocking down the missile. These new Patriots are capable of hitting it dead on, as I say, bullet hitting bullet. And so far there have been no casualties and really no damage from the as many as 7, 8, possibly 9 missiles of some description that have been thrown in the direction of Iraq. What you have here is an overview of Baghdad. Keep in mind that a barrage of mighty explosives, a whole barrage a day, over 300 Tomahawk cruise missiles hit in and around Baghdad. The Council of Ministers is burning. Parts of the old presidential palace are burning. Parts of the presidential residence complex are burning. These, by the way, are large areas. This isn't just a case of one building. The foreign ministry was hit last night. Whether it was hit today, we do not know. And in the pictures, you could see great clouds of smoke and hits on the outskirts of Baghdad. We're going to replay some of the earlier nightmare that was descended on Baghdad. When you talk about 360 or so Tomahawk cruise missiles, those are the ones that are fired from sea, not to mention other guided bombs. It gives you some idea of how heavy this air attack was on Baghdad. However, this was not the ultimate air attack that could be perpetrated on Baghdad, because for one thing, the so-called E-bomb, the one that knocks out anything with a transistor in it and would in fact knock out all the electricity, obviously was not, I repeat for emphasis, not dropped today. As you look at those pictures of what happened to Baghdad earlier in the day, let's go to CBS News correspondent Mark Strassman, who's with the 101st Airborne, still in Kuwait. Mark, any word on when the 101st may move out?
Dan, there's some word here I can tell you about. Clearly, these folks, these troops, that is, watching the day's events with great interest. I mean, all of the attention, understandably, today has been on this mighty and impressive first wave of U.S. troops that have been crossing the border, especially the 3rd Infantry Division and the Marines. But there's also a second wave that's going to come right behind them, and that hopes to do more than its share of effort and damage to Saddam Hussein and his war machine. And clearly the 101st Airborne Division is part of that second wave. So today what you have is troops here getting themselves together, getting their gear together. They separate their main duffel bag, which they will not need, and they put that in one truck, and on the other trucks that will go with them will be their rucksack that has most of their necessary belongings, and then a war bag too. And all of that is something that is happening tonight and tomorrow as these troops with the 1st Brigade of the 101st Infantry Division here get set to move on to the next phase of their battle plan. Again, they have been watching today with great interest because whatever happens to the 3rd Infantry Division gives them a sense of what is going to happen to them as well. They will be moving in essentially right behind the 3rd ID, and so they watched here today with great interest for that reason, and what they saw essentially was pretty much what they had hoped would happen. That is, resistance was reasonably light. It wasn't a bloodbath out there. Yes, there was a loss of life among U.S. forces, and that was sad for these folks, especially when the helicopter went down. Remember, this is an airborne assault outfit. Anytime you lose a helicopter, especially when the loss is because of an accident, that can be a sobering reminder of the stakes involved here. And remember, these guys use helicopters all the time to accomplish their missions. But what they essentially saw today was a battlefield that seemed reasonably not at the bloodbath, as I said, and seemed to have every expectation of going well for the 3rd Infantry Division and then in turn for these guys. So what you have here, Dan, are troops getting ready to pack up to become part of this second wave, keeping a close eye on both the television, if you're one of the regular troops, and on intelligence gathering that the commanders have been receiving. And then one other piece of intelligence I wanted to share with you, Dan. I was in the tactical operating command post about 45 minutes ago, and one intelligence officer came into another and said, "Have you seen the latest report?" And the other officer said no, and the first one said, "The report says that Saddam Hussein has authorized local commanders to use chemical weapons." There's been no confirmation that any of that has happened, but the intelligence floating around now apparently around various commanders locally here is that the concern that Saddam Hussein would use chemical weapons is now perhaps more real than ever. And that is something that obviously the military and all of us are going to have to keep a very close eye on in the days ahead. Dan?
Mark Strassman with the 101st Airborne reporting live from their headquarters in Kuwait. We go now to a spot near the Euphrates River where CBS News producer Phil Ittner is with us, another part of the 3rd Infantry Division, a different part from where we had Jim Axelrod reporting earlier. Let's see if Phil is still there. You're still on the phone with us, Phil?
Yeah, I can hear you, Dan.
Well, what's the situation? You're just outside An-Nasiriyah, major Iraqi crossroads on the Euphrates River. What is the situation there?
Yeah, Dan, that's correct. I'm with separate elements than from what Jim Axelrod is with. These elements are trying to take An-Nasiriyah. Now, before they went across the border, we had very strong military intelligence on the American side that the commanders within An-Nasiriyah were willing to capitulate. They were going to lay down their arms. We are now getting intelligence, again from U.S. sources, that they have been reinforced by elements of the Republican Guard. Now, it is either a reinforcement or those Republican Guard units are actually cajoling the troops that were already in An-Nasiriyah to fight. They are not capitulating. They are putting up a resistance. Resistance is not heavy, but it is there. Dan?
Well, that's a potentially very important development as the 3rd Infantry tries to make rapid headway toward Baghdad. Now, whatever happens in Nasiriyah, whether it decides to give up, whether it decides to fight, and as you just heard in that report from Phil, and Phil, stay in here with us for a moment, the intention, as I understand it, and as the best available counsel we have, is that the 3rd Infantry Division intends to keep on moving, whatever happens in this place along the Euphrates River. Now, Phil, has there been much fighting in that area? We've heard some reports of, quote, tank battles, at least on a limited basis, involving the 3rd Infantry. Have you seen any of that? Do you know for a fact that it has happened?
What I do know for a fact that has happened, Dan, is that Apache longbow squadrons have engaged the enemy in and around An-Nasiriyah, and that they are basically dispatching whatever they can find there. There are, as I say, reports that they're being fired upon in return. I am actually with one of those Apache squadrons. There are, of course, other elements that are trying to push into An-Nasiriyah, armored elements of the 3rd Mechanized Infantry Division. And if indeed there are tank battles going on, that would be from where that would be happening. At this point, however, what I can definitely report to you is what the Apaches are encountering, and that is some resistance, I hesitate to say substantial, in and around An-Nasiriyah.
Well, any tank battle with the Iraqis, Phil, would figure to be an uneven battle, and nobody's looking for an even battle with the Iraqis because the U.S. Abrams tank has a greater range and greater mobility than anything the Iraqis have in the way of tanks. And then this new longbow Apache can reach out a fair distance and destroy a number of tanks almost simultaneously. It doesn't have to just zero in on one tank. Phil, what else can you tell us from that position there? Because this is the most forward position from which we have had a report, with the exception of Jim Axelrod, your partner there, who's with another part of the 3rd Infantry. But have any special forces seized a bridge over the Euphrates, to your knowledge?
We have no intelligence. I have no information at this point about what special forces are up to. Obviously, that's a very closely guarded secret. Military officials here have reiterated basically to me that they are trying to keep certain things pretty closely under wraps. As a matter of fact, I'm not supposed to disclose too much about where I'm at or what our operations are. So as far as special operations are concerned, that is pretty much left in the shadows where it's pretty much intended to be. Dan?
Do you have any bridges in sight where you are? Any intact bridges you can see?
As we were flying up, actually, we saw some smaller bridges, but nothing substantial. And I must keep in mind, I must reiterate that was basically in the more southern part of Iraq, and I'm sure you can hear some of these Apaches now returning from one of their missions. They've been coming and going pretty much all night since they came into this airfield and occupied it and started running missions out of here. So I apologize if you can't quite hear me.
No apology necessary, Phil. You say the Apaches have encountered, quote, some resistance. Do we know what kind? Was it small arms fire or tanks or some other kind of armored vehicles? Know anything about that?
We do, Dan. Actually, there was at least some surface-to-air missile activity. An awful lot of small arms fire is being reported by some of these pilots who are coming back. There's not an awful lot of surface-to-air missiles, but I spoke to one squadron that returned, and they encountered at least 2. So again, it appears as though this sector here near An-Nasiriyah is not quite as ready to roll over as military intelligence had hoped. That will most likely affect the battle plans here. As you mentioned, the plan was basically to take these enemy prisoners of war and keep moving, get up to Baghdad or around Baghdad as quick as possible. Whether or not this will slow them down at all, it's yet to be seen. But obviously, they're going to have to change the battle plan a little bit because these leaders, these generals in charge of the troops inside An-Nasiriyah are not simply rolling over. Dan?
Phil Ittner reporting live with the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division. And get the picture here, folks. It's one thing to see Baghdad on fire, Baghdad burning again. It's quite another to get a word picture and form in one's mind what's happening out there in the desert. As I say, this is a throwback in some ways to the North African campaigns, Rommel versus Montgomery and so forth of World War II. And around Al-Nasiriyah, which Phil Ittner pointed out, there was some expectation that troops would be surrendering He has fresh information that some Republican Guard units apparently have arrived there, and surrendering has not been happening. And he also says Apache longbows, that's the most advanced Apache tank-killing helicopters, have engaged the enemy. The Apaches have encountered, quote, some resistance. He saw some ground-to-air missiles being fired. Now, those ground-to-air missiles could indeed be part of the U.S. Patriot missile defense system, which is there to defend the 3rd Infantry Division, but it also could be missiles and other equipment fired at the helicopters from the ground, everything from handheld weapons to some sort of knock the helicopters out of the sky special equipment. So there has been a battle with the, and from the description of Phil Ittner, I wouldn't say an extensive battle, but certainly a battle in the desert there, and it's bound to at least slow a little the 3rd Infantry Division as it runs up toward Baghdad. The hope is that the 3rd Infantry and perhaps some U.S. Marine elements could be at the gates of Baghdad by Sunday or Monday. We'll see whether that works out. But I want to review again, Phil Ittner reports some surface-to-air activity. Was it RPGs? That we don't know. Some small arms fire. The generals inside Al-Naziriyah, the Iraqi generals, quote, are not just rolling over, unquote, despite the fact that intelligence indicated that they were ready to do so several days ago. It speaks to the rapid changes on the battlefield. Yes, the battle plan, whether it's ground or air, always looks terrific up on the briefing boards at the Pentagon and, for that matter, in the newsrooms of CBS News. But one always wants to remember that people with their feet in boots have to carry out those ground plans, and while they seemingly and apparently into all appearances and reports have gone very well so far on the ground, it doesn't mean that it's been easy all the way. And we'll keep monitoring with Jim Axelrod and Phil Ittner, our reporters with the 3rd Infantry, to see how things go as this day rolls along. Now, let's go to what happened earlier in the day in Baghdad. It's coming up soon, 5 minutes to 4 in New York, coming up soon, midnight in Baghdad. This was the scene earlier today. We now know that some 360 Tomahawk cruise missiles, seaborne, sea-launched missiles, and some air-launched missiles, in addition to specially guided bombs, hit in Baghdad. And as you look at those pictures of what happened earlier today, we're going to call in our longtime CBS News consultant and analyst, Milt Bearden, former senior CIA official and expert on military affairs and terrorism, for, among other things, he ran the anti-Soviet campaign in Afghanistan during the 1980s. Good to see you again, Milt. But as we look at these pictures, how are they going to play in the rest of the Arab world, to say nothing of the Islamic world beyond the Arabs? That's not to suggest that they play badly. It's what I'll call a straight-ahead question. How is it going to play?
Well, I think the so-called Arab street is not going to see anything today on Al Jazeera that is going to shock them. We're not seeing large civilian casualties. We're seeing a good number of troops with their hands in the air marching quietly. We're even seeing Americans administering first aid and providing water to POWs that have been voluntarily coming over. So I think the sheer intensity of the precision bombing of Baghdad is going to be counterbalanced by those images if they get to the Arab Street. I'm not sure that we'll have to be concerned with the Arab Street for the next 2 or 3 days. Quite honestly, I think they'll be focusing mainly on what they can do during this bombing lull with the Republican Guard at Baghdad.
We're going to take a slight pause in just a minute, but how do you think Saddam Hussein is reacting? Do you think he's still alive? Do you think he's hurt?
I don't think he's got control right now. I think that he's probably trying to cover too many bets at one time. I think this Al-Nasiriyah event, where he's had to dispatch Republican guards down there to stiffen the resolve, is to me a sign that we're starting to scramble. We're playing out of the rough, maybe going to audibles as such.
Milt Bearden will continue this conversation in a minute. Right now, this is CBS continuing coverage of America at War. Picking up our conversation with Milt Bearden, former senior official with the CIA, now a longtime CBS News consultant. How do you think the Iraqi people are reacting to this situation? We know that they don't know nearly everything that's going on, but as one with long experience in dealing with populations such as this, not only in Afghanistan, but the Sudan and elsewhere, how are they likely to respond?
Depends on what's happened on the ground in Baghdad tonight. Depends on the precision of our airstrikes. I think that we probably have greater precision than we could have imagined 12 years ago, and I think that when it's said and done, after we cut through early reports, we're going to find out that the civilian population has not suffered greatly yet in Baghdad, and I think we're going to try to keep that up. I think that will be part of an underlying psychological warfare game that is going on intensely right now, that we haven't seen before. If we think that these precision munitions are enough to put us in awe, what they're doing in the psychological side should also put us in awe.
And what is that?
The Secretary of Defense has alluded to contacts that are underway, not government to government, but contacts with commanders in the field, with Republican Guard commanders, perhaps down to battalion or level or below. Imagine a country that has a VIP digital cell phone net, and these guys are looking at their cell phones and there's a message addressed to them from Tommy Franks.
Give it up or die kind of message.
Or say, even more personal than that. We know more about these people than we have about any enemy that we've ever come up against. We can say to a battalion commander, Mohammed, your wife Fatima, young Yasser, and young Hana are fine. Tell them to stay where they are and not to come near certain areas of town. But you've got to think this over. We really need you to think hard about this. Signed, Tommy Franks.
And that's what makes it as much an information war as it does a war of conventional weapons.
We're emailing these guys. I mean, the phones are still on.
So it's not the E-bomb war, it's the email war.
We don't want to use the E-bomb war for a while. I mean, right now we want the phones to work in Baghdad because I think that the smartest army always wins a victory without taking the cities by force. We want these Republican Guards commanders to roll over, and if you can get down and personal with them, this has got to have some effect. I think that's what changed the rhythm of this war from Wednesday night's strike against the leadership to now. Now we're in another lull. And I would imagine right now the emails and the telephones are zinging, and that we're in touch with these people.
Let me turn for a minute to General Joe Ralston, retired general. General, would it be your assessment, your analysis, which is all that you can give us, that the airstrikes are pretty much finished for the night? There's still a lot of darkness to go.
There's really no way to tell with the information that I have here. I mean, it's midnight there. They've still got several hours of darkness. As Milt says, one of the issues you got depends on the conversations you're having. You may be having some conversations that are useful. Now, that can work both ways. If they need a little more incentive, then maybe you could see another wave, another strike.
Which says, in essence, how long do we have to keep doing this? If you need to be hit again, we're prepared to hit you again until you're ready to give it up.
Absolutely right.
General Joe Ralston, thanks. We're going to continue our conversations and also go back to the field. We now have, and have had this last hour, excellent contact with the advancing 3rd Infantry Division. And we know that the Apache helicopters have been engaged in combat. We know that there have been some tank battles. That's not to say on a large scale. We don't know that. But there have been some firing of tanks, and the 3rd Infantry Division is trying to keep its momentum, trying to keep its accelerated pace heading for Baghdad up, hoping to be at the gates of Baghdad in 24 to 48 hours if that's possible. We know they're already over a third of the way there. And the airstrikes in Iraq in general, we know, are continuing. Baghdad is in at least a lull for the moment, having been hit very hard earlier in the day. This is CBS News continuing coverage of America at War.
This CBS News special report is part of our continuing coverage of America at War. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
4 p.m. in the East USA,